Alright. Hi there. Are we recording? Yes, we are. Alright. Well, this is a bunch of pictures of the heater blower for my 39 Pontiac. This is during the creation process. I never made a blower housing before. I used the motor from a Camaro heater. I actually bought the whole Camaro heater with the air conditioning condenser, or was it the evaporator? Can't remember which. And I was going to put it in the hot rod, but it wouldn't fit, so just ended up using the actual motor in the squirrel cage. And then I had to make a housing, so I had to make it out of something. So there was some sheet metal that came with the Pontiac that was that somebody had used to surround the bottom of the seat, and they had upholstered over it with glue and so on. So I ripped all that off, and there was a bunch of rust underneath there, and I thought that looked pretty cool. So I decided to hammer out a squirrel cage and then weld it together. And this is these are a bunch of pictures of the squirrel cage as it evolved. When I got it all together, the way I first made it, it had a really sharp bend or cut into the part where the air comes out, and that made it exceedingly noisy. It's still sort of noisy, but I eventually changed the way the air comes out of the thing to quiet it down. Now this is I didn't know how the actual heater part where the heat exchanger goes. I didn't know how that would look, and I couldn't figure it out by drawing it. So my wife suggested I just take construction paper and make one. So I sat at the kitchen table and made one, and used the blower to mount underneath there. If you can sort of envision the blower's inlet takes air from the passenger compartment, and then it mounts to the firewall, of course, so it sucks air from the floor area into itself and then blows it back through the heat exchanger. And that's what this bunch of paper is all about. I use Scotch tape and construction paper to make these patterns. And then as you can see, they're pretty boring. Yeah, so then I went out to the car, and I use masking tape, because you can stick it on stuff and then draw a line on it. So then I used a packing, what is that? That's the top lid to the Edelbrock carburetor pack box. I used that for a pattern so that I could then put sort of tape on the firewall, and then figure out where to cut the hole in the firewall for this thing to mount. As it happens, it turns out that the blower case that I made, the motor, stick out about half an inch away from my valve cover. I missed the valve cover. Thank the Lord. But I didn't realize it was going to be so close when I was cutting it in there. So I've been thinking about getting new valve covers, but I always wonder if they're going to be too high and hit into my blower motor. This is shot from the inside of the car, showing the tape and outline drawn for the blower. And I used this Sawzall and a Dremel tool with a cutter blade on it, and various other tools. And there's the blower being reconfigured because it was so noisy. That's my lap. Just sits there. And I figured out how to make the, cut it apart and reconfigure it, re-weld it, and so on. It was fun. Yeah, so this is when I bent the shape up there, I needed more steel, so I had to go back out and get some rusty stuff and patch the patch together. Here it is going into the car. There it is in the car. This is from the inside, of course. Looking out. And this is when I started to build the heat exchanger box. This is the back of the heat exchanger. This was the heat exchanger that came with the Camaro heater. So I didn't know at this point in time if that thing was going to work or was plugged or whatever. I just decided, hey, if it didn't work, I'd have to take it somewhere and have it fixed, or fix it myself somehow. But it's the way I roll. Just throw it together, and whatever happens, happens. When I got this thing together, I think these shots are all showing the case the way it was, and I had to stretch it out. It ended up being a little too thin, so I had to make it fatter on the front side. So I just took the heat exchanger out and added more steel. And that's what's nice about using sheet steel. You can always add more if you need it. Just more welding and grinding. Here's a shot of the top. The shape evolved because the dashboard and that area up in there where the heater was going to go was not big enough for just a square heater, so I had to lop off that corner to make it fit. And I use these little strips to make a lip all the way around, so I could bolt the front on. I think the top, can't remember if the top comes, I think the top comes off and the front comes off, and then the bottom and back side and sides are all welded together. So I figured I had to get it apart again for, if something leaked or whatever. So it still comes apart. Actually, the heater door malfunctioned a while back. One of the screws that held stuff together in there, because the heater door is motorized. So one of the screws came apart, and the heater door quit working. The heater door motor continued to work, but the structure that I built to connect the door to the motor fell apart. So I had to get in there and figure out what was going on. I made a video of it. There's the front of the thing with the heater door open. Here's that's the inside. Those are the hinges I made. That was kind of interesting. And wanted the door to be on the outside, and then the door was too tall and hit the glove box, and I cut the door top down and weld the top of the door, and that was interesting. So things evolve. This was my first gen for the motor. I was going to build a screw type setup, and this ended up working, but the door flew open at such a huge rate. This is a 1.5 volt motor, so I ran it on 12 volts, and it did like 30,000 RPMs or so, so it opened the door too fast, and the door would get locked open, and then it wouldn't shut, and then, or it'd slam shut and it wouldn't open, and it was a big drag, so I scrapped it out and eventually used a gearhead, 3 to 6 RPM gearhead that has all kinds of torque, and that's what I ended up with. And I don't know where I put this motor. Still got it for use in the future. So there it is in the hot rod, and it works like a champ. There's another picture. Notice my hot rod wiring. This is all hand wired, of course. There's the extension. This is showing the extension that I had to make because wasn't. I think the hinges on the door. I think that's what my hinges on the front door hit the heater core. So that is no good, Door wouldn't close, the front wouldn't fit, whatever. So I welded on more metal. And so there you go. Here's the finished product, kind of. It's on my workbench there. In the garage, it's back in the house next to the computer. Let's see. Those two computers are dead now. And that's the cat. She likes the heater. Pickle likes to get into everything. So she's checking out the heater. And there's what I ended up. This is what the door looks like these days. A bunch of wiring. I had to put limit switches in and steering diodes so that the door will only open up to when the limit switch says stop, and then it'll close again because the steering diodes allow the current to go one way, but they won't let it go the other way. So that allows the door to close, and at only a certain distance it'll close, and then it will only open a certain distance until